I think everybody knows about Disneyland and Disney World and Universal Studios and all of that.
Yeah.
But after moving here, I realized, much to my intense happiness, that theme parks aren't just reserved for Florida and California, but can actually be found in many states.
7 things America does really well. Looking forward to checking this out. Always enjoy the Lost in the Pond videos. Just before we jump into the video, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button. It massively helps out the channel. We're growing. We're going to jump straight in and press play.
It feels like you're living the dream while also escaping the feds. Hello, I'm Lawrence. I'm from Britain and I live in the United States, and anybody that's seen my channel before will know that I absolutely love living here. Now, don't get me wrong, I do have feelings about the things that America doesn't do quite so well, just as I'm aware of Britain's shortcomings. But, I'm an optimist, and amid all of the criticisms that might be thrown at America, I often think it's important to remind myself of the things that America does well. I think amid the pandemic of the last 2 years and this sort of political division that's engulfed the country, it can be easy for us to lose sight of those details, those things that have made my stay in the United States an enjoyable one. So I'm going to outline some of them right here, right now, so that you can share this video from now until the end of time. Here are 7 things that the United States of America does really well. Yes, it's a little bit of a cliche because, everybody loves pizza. Even back in Britain, we like pizza, just not as much as we do in America. I lived in Britain for 26 years. I've lived in America for 14, and I've probably had 100 times more pizzas since moving here. And on the whole, America does them really well. I'm sure the Italians won't thank me for saying that, and I'll caveat that by saying I do also love Italian pizza. I just love pizza in general. That's sort of a rule, isn't it? But America has many different styles. And of course, I live in Chicago, so I am living in the place where one of its most famous pizzas was born. And if I'm in the mood and I haven't eaten in 3 days, a Chicago deep dish pizza is amazing. But, and this is the reason that I don't go out onto the streets of Chicago anymore, I actually prefer the Detroit style. I know, because the thing is with Detroit style, it's like Hufflepuff. Everybody thinks they're either Gryffindor or Slytherin, but I'm a contrarian by nature, so I always like to go for the third option. For me, it's not New York.
So I have seen different pizzas, but I don't know what the differences are. I'm sure I've seen where the cheese is underneath or something like that. I would be interested in trying different pizzas in America, but yeah, in the UK, it's pretty much a standard pizza, cheese, toppings on top. That's pretty much what you're going to get. But I do like pizza.
Style or Chicago, it's Detroit. I promise that not all of my answers are about food, but I felt like I had to include this one. Not many things beat the feeling of waking up on a Sunday morning and making that decision to go to your local diner and have breakfast. For me, there's just a significant amount of warmth that comes with an American diner. It's the early morning chatter, it's the pour of the coffee, it's the omelettes and the hash browns, it's the seating booth, it's all of it. I mean, it just makes up for such a great atmosphere. And, we do have, of course, cafeterias and things like that back in Britain, but we don't really have anything that's precisely the same as an American diner, which is sort of a shame because they also remind me of adventure, right? I always think of 2 film characters meeting in secret to plot the overthrow of the villain who's come to annihilate the city. I mean, that's why I go to diners.
It looks pretty cool.
Streets. This might seem like a weird answer, especially since, of course, we have streets in Britain. And to some extent, I miss the streets in Britain. There's character to the winding nature of them, and you can very much get lost just looking for the post office. Here, it feels like you're less likely to do that, and the orderly side of my brain appreciates that. Streets, firstly, of course, are laid out usually in blocks, so you have kind of rectangular streets. This is very much in line with my observations of America's fascination with rectangles. But it's not just that. Right? It's the things that are on the street. Those fire hydrants that you see in the movies, it turns out they're real. And the house numbers seem to go on forever. It almost seemed peculiar back in Britain if the house number went into 4 digits. I don't know that I've had an American address that's had fewer than 3. Are there any Americans that live at, number 4 Washington Street? Oh, and streets as well. They're all named after presidents.
Yeah, let us know in the comments. Does anybody live in a number below 100? I'm curious now.
Places in America or types of tree. And I just love that continuity. I love saying things like, I'll meet you on the corner of Maplewood and Jefferson in 5. And there are always people walking their dogs on these streets, and they're usually super polite, and they'll look you in the eye and say, good morning. It's afternoon. I really couldn't have made this list without including entertainment. I mean, obviously that's quite a broad term, but I think in general terms, very few countries do entertainment like the United States. Firstly, I mean, America produces so much entertainment. You could be talking about music, television, film, and in each of those, there's just such a vast array of output. Now, don't get me wrong, some of it's crap. But when they get it right, which historically has been often, you end up with The Wizard of Oz, you end up with Star Wars, you end up with the Marvel franchise, Quantum Leap. I could go on. Wrestling.
Theme parks.
I thought about including this under entertainment, but it seems as though theme parks deserve their own entry.
We just recently checked out the Dollywood theme park, and wow, that place looked cool. The food in there looked amazing. So I would love to go to some American theme parks.
That was a pun on entering a theme park. Now, over the years, Britain has had its fair share of theme parks, from Alton Towers to Flamingo Land to the M25, but America just has more of them. And of course, I think everybody knows about Disneyland and Disney World and Universal Studios and all of that.
Yeah.
But after moving here, I realized, much to my intense happiness, that theme parks aren't just reserved for Florida and California, but can actually be found in many states. I think the first one I went to was Kings Island, just outside of Cincinnati. And I also went to Holiday World in Santa Claus, Indiana, and yes, that's a real place. And the strange thing is, I didn't go on many of the roller coasters because I have this overwhelming feeling that we're going to crash. So you might be thinking, what do you even get out of theme parks? And to me, it's the atmosphere. It's the balloons, it's the movie scores that play throughout the entire place.
Oh,
it's
I can
the hot
understand
summer
that.
days, it's the interns dressed in a Yogi Bear costume. Come to think of it, that must be hell in July. But for the rest of us, it's great to meet Yogi and friends. People who watch this channel regularly know that I absolutely love parks, partly for the opposite reason that I love theme parks, which now that I've said that out loud, I've just realised that theme parks are themselves parks. Anyway, the point is, it's the relative absence of people that makes them so enjoyable. This was even the case for me when I lived in Britain, where we have a boatload of parks, some of which have boats. But just like with theme parks, America has way more of them. And some of them are absolutely massive. There's one in Alaska that is larger than Northern Ireland and Wales combined. In fact, back in the day, I did a video about US national parks that absolutely dwarf their UK equivalents. I'll link to that at the end of this video. And there's sort of a hierarchy of parks here as well. You've got the sort of local municipal parks, you've got state parks, you've got national parks. Spoil for choice because the United States is made up of a very diverse terrain. So you've got the hot springs at Yellowstone National Park, you've got the tree-laden mountains of Great Smoky Mountains National Park, you've got the Grand Canyon, and just 100 million other places. That is an exaggeration, but there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
And of course, you could fly to these places, although not directly. You'd have to go to an airport. But really, let's be honest, does that beat a good old American road trip? I don't think so. I love the...
One thing I'd love to try is a road trip in the RV. That just sounds like such an experience. If you had it planned out, you knew where you was going, you could visit some really cool places.
Open road in the US, and some of that comes from the movies. Again, it's just like with the diner. It feels like you're living the dream while also escaping the feds. And you just stick on Billy Joel or something cool, you wind down the window and you just hit the gas, man. Not the gas man, you hit the gas, comma, man. It's amazing. And that open road, of course, really is open and long, with some highways spanning the entire country. And you see things on these journeys that you don't see from the air, and you certainly wouldn't see in Britain, like quirky roadside attractions, especially when you're on a historic route, or the terrain that I just spoke about. And taking road trips in Britain was never quite the same thing, because firstly, the country is nowhere near as big, and secondly, in the UK, you can get to most towns and cities by train, which is equally adventurous, but you can't really do that for the most part in America, because there isn't high-speed rail. That's an example of something it doesn't do too well. So I've learned to embrace one of the things that it does, and that's road trips. That is it for this episode. Let me know in the comments below some of the things that you think America does well. I'm Lawrence Brown. You can follow me on Twitter at LostInThePondUS, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that my videos don't get lost in the pond.
Really interesting video. Enjoyed checking it out. Would absolutely love to try some American pizza in different places, and a road trip and an RV. That is something I would definitely love to do. But thank you so much for checking out the video. I'd really appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button. But for now, I'm going to catch you on the next reaction.